which probably could have been avoided. It is observed that a trailer, that is an articulated vehicle that was conveying 56 passengers, suffered a tire burst while speeding. Unfortunately, he lost control and veered into the bush. On the spot, 16 of the persons died, 34 others sustained varied injuries. In fact, the driver of the truck survived, and he says that he picked up his passenger from Kara filling station in Lagos, and they were all heading towards either Zaria or Kano. Sadly, they have almost reached Kaduna, very few kilometers to Zaria, and then the recklessness and overspeeding led to this sad development. The Nigeria scientists have produced 2 COVID-19 vaccines. This is a very positive development that was announced by the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and the Minister of Health. And they have also called for support so that scientists should be given this support to create the enabling environment to attain certification and also motivate other researchers. It is about a year ago, if you will recall, March 21st, 2020, when the first total lockdown was declared. Gladly, the numbers are beginning to decline significantly, so much so that last Sunday, we recorded the lowest number of COVID-19 cases. So far, 122,410 Nigerians have been vaccinated with the AstraZeneca vaccine since it started on 5th March. It may be recalled that we received consignment of the vaccine from Mumbai in India. There are also been concern that's been raised across the world about the COVID-19 vaccines. But information has it that the culprit vaccine was suspectedly produced in Europe, and it was supplied from 1 million doses that were supplied to 17 European countries. Those are the vaccines that are begin suspect, for which about 8 countries in Europe have stopped the administration of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Nigerian vaccine came from Mumbai, and it may be recalled that the AstraZeneca Oxford University had contracted Serum Institute of India. It has the largest manufacturing outfit for vaccines in the world, and they could name, the trade name they gave to their own AstraZeneca vaccine is Covishield, and that is why it's been administered in Nigeria. And the executive director of the National Primary Health Care Agency says that so far, 33 states and the FCT have commenced administration of the vaccine. 4 states, Kogi, Kebbi, Zamfara, and Oyo State, have not commenced any. In South Africa, the Witwatersrand University had, through its research, said that the AstraZeneca vaccine is not effective for the South African round of the COVID-19. Luckily for us, the vaccine, the COVID-19 strain that we have in Nigeria is the UK vaccine, and the United Kingdom Health Authorities has certified the efficacy of AstraZeneca with the UK brand of the COVID-19. The Nigerian Petroleum Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, says the East rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery is followed due process and is within reasonable cost. They have in comparison between a refinery that is being sold by Shell in USA at 1.2, and others have argued that our refinery was rather too expensive to be rehabilitated at 1.5. The GMD pointed out that refinery in the United States has been built since 1915, and the capacity of that refinery is 107 barrels. Our own refinery has a capacity of 210 barrels a day, which is almost twice the size of the one in the United States. And the GMD also says that the repair is going to entail total rehabilitation, require major components being replaced, and new items introduced, and upgrade of the plant. He has expressed optimism that within 18 months, the refinery will be producing gas. And when the rehabilitation is completed, the plant will work for the next 15 years or more. and we'll be running. We won't have any problems. So there's high hope as far as the refinery is concerned, and the rehabilitation is set to be within cost. It followed extreme due process.
And like they said, it will be in three phases.
3 phases.
Yes.
Yes, within the first 18 months, the refinery will have been 90% completed, and therefore it will be functioning. But the other works extend out to the refinery, which will also continue up to the 44th month to get the refinery running. After that, it will be the turn of the one in Warri and Kaduna. And by the time we finish rehabilitating all the refineries, the idea of importing fuel probably will become a thing of the past.
And one other thing I saw, I read in the Nation newspaper, Northwest governors issue vacate forest order to bandits. That means no more negotiation with them?
Well, the negotiation is a strategy that was adopted by Zamfara. It's a carrot and stick process. If you surrender your arms, fine, you will be accepted, and those who refuse will face the wrath of the law. But all forests within the country are under the control of state government. And there are some forest reserves that have become a safe haven for criminals. And so with this order coming from the state government, it now gives the security authorities to expel anybody who has made the forest their abode. And you know that specifically, particularly in the Northwest, the bandits live in the forest, and their mode of commuting is on motorcycles. Even some states, including Katsina, at a point in time prohibited movement of motorcycles within those forests. Again, it was part of curbing the excesses of the bandits. But with this order now, it means that anybody who lives in the forest has become a persona non grata.
Okay, well, the number of other stories, that's the headline I read from Daily Trust a while ago, saying some Supreme Court decisions no longer make sense. That's Justice Bode Rosevival, who retired yesterday from the Supreme Court upon attaining the age of 70. Now, the context, of course, in which he was speaking is a very significant one. It's not something we can get into details here discussing, because it also lies at the heart of our jurisprudence, which is to say the common law system, which is based on precedents, and precedents, the principle of stare decisis. Again, those are details, as I said. I don't want to get involved. But Justice Rosevival, of course, had a remarkable career on the bench. He had a remarkable career on the bench. And one of the significant decisions that he will be remembered for had to do with female inheritance of their deceased father's estate. Female inheritance. If you know, in some cultures in Nigeria, the customary law tended to prohibit women from inheriting the estate of their father. So uncles and others who didn't break a sweat when their father was laboring for his family would then come and take away whatever is left, of the estate. Assuming the man doesn't even have a son or didn't have a son, then it goes into the hands of the extended family. And they say, look, this is against, contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. So it's a very significant decision that he made on that particular occasion. But there are others, of course, that we can also align with the retired justice now on some of the outdated decisions, all decisions that have been overtaken by time and stuff. But one of the greatest places where they have the most confusion, with the greatest respect to their lordships, is in election jurisprudence. You find all kinds of conflicting decisions. You're trying to make sense out of the maze of decisions and principles and the basis for those decisions. And I tell you, I mean, if you don't have migraine, then you must have taken some very strong analgesics, to help you prevent that. Yes.
The law evolves, and sometimes when you look back at some of the decisions, that's why some justices will say certain decisions of the court are not to be used for future references, because their context and relevance are limited to that point in time. Well, it was an elaborate and wonderful career he had, and we wish him at least a peaceable rest in his theater.
That's right.
Okay, on that.
Okay, Bayo, thanks a lot. Well, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity of having a detailed conversation around the racketeering of vaccines. Is this a Nigerian thing? Is this a Nigerian thing? Happily, the chairman of the presidential task force, we saw him in the news some minutes ago, as well as the CEO of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, issuing stern warnings to persons who were already involved in this racketeering to be picked up and arraigned. You know, it's that simple. This is a matter of life and death. And then you have all kinds of crooks who are already getting into this business of racketeering of vaccines.
Well, I don't know whether it is in our nature, but Nigerians sometimes can baffle you with the way they can go, at least on the negative side. And the only way out is set out intelligence officers, pick one or two. Once they are made a scapegoat, I think
swiftly.
Swiftly.
That's the problem. When you don't enforce the law, everybody says, no, nothing will happen, and then nothing happens.
But it's
How
criminal.
will they get it?
It's criminal.
Who will they get it from? Yes, because there must be a passage for it to pass before the criminals get access to it.
Whoever was involved in that chain of events that led to whatever allegations have been made, pick up one or two of them
and make example of it.
Make example speedily.
No matter how highly placed, heads must rule. If it ends up in patent shop, chemist, you just can't imagine what will happen. Well, Bayo, on that note, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you too.
It's been a pleasure. We'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation begins.
This vaccine is safe, and it has been certified safe and usable by NAFTA.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
Welcome back, and to continue our discussion on the subject matter, let's join our correspondent Abdul Salam Jibrin with excerpts from our yesterday's discussion.
What you see in our climb is that in various sectors there are leaders. There are leaders in the civil society sector, there are religious leaders, there are leaders in academic, there are leaders in business. You will see that in our own climb, leadership in all the other sectors have performed better than leadership in the political sector.
So many people are going to leadership without really understanding why are they going to leadership. And that's exactly why we are here. So we have this poor leadership selection process, and even the criteria set for leadership selection have been marred with a lot of irregularities. So the very moment we're able to get it right from the foundation, and I think we should be able to overcome some of these challenges. Apart from that, even the present, some of us, the present crop of leaders, we also have a challenge with insincerity. Many of us are not sincere with what we are doing.
What I think we are missing here in trying to give an accurate leadership is the issue of honesty and integrity. The youth of this country needed to be assisted with capacity building if we need to build a very strong Nigeria. Because you may wish to agree with me that the greatest asset this country has is still its young people.
Long before I came on board to be the governor, I realized that there was need for this societal reorientation. We have to start somewhere. Even the issue of recruiting the best of people to come into politics, to go into positions, there has to be this reorientation to let them know that there is their need for them to come and participate. I agree the political leadership, of course leadership at all levels need to be upright, but the political leadership is the central issue because that is, it's just like the pyramid, it trickles down.
We need good men, but we need more than good men. We need to build firewalls around governance, and you need to bring the people into that conversation. And that is why the question about reorientation is very critical. There are societies that have had very profound program of reorientation of their people. And those societies pass through, major political upheavals, like a revolution. The former Soviet Union, China that we are talking about, and you even go to ideological school right from your youth. But for the leadership to do this, they have to be committed to total change.
All right, now those were excerpts from our first conversation on this topic yesterday by our guests who were with us in the studios as well as who joined us remotely via Zoom and from our Port Harcourt Network Center. Today, we have three guests with us. Two of them, of course, are regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. First, let's welcome Professor Osarieme Osumbo, a former governor of Edo State and also former two-term senator, former chairman, Nigeria Law Reform Commission. Prof, glad to have you again this morning.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Also here with us, Honorable Shaba Ibrahim is a member of the House of Reps. Of course, he's representing the federal constituency of Lokoja and Kotokarfe, and also one-time chairman of a local government, and indeed he was Argon chairman in Kogi State. Honorable Shaba, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
And we also have joining us Johannes Toby Wujola, Curator, Abuja Global Shapers Community. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, let's begin by having your own thoughts on what is the clear linkage between the leadership deficit and the governance challenges that we're having. Symptomized, of course, by the many issues that we're having to deal with day to day at all levels and in different parts of the country. Professor Osumbo, take your first shot.
Well, as from the background introductory,
brief. I was particularly struck by the contribution of Senator Shekarau that mentioned that when you're talking of leadership, it depends on the kind of leadership and the setting that you have in mind. Whether it's in the corporate world, whether it is in the civil service, whether it's in the educational sector, leadership exists at those various spheres and levels. But by far the most important is the political leadership, because that has a way of impacting and influencing the leadership at those other levels. You mentioned that there have been challenges. Why do these challenges exist? Why do they seem to be intractable? First of all, many people would want to be identified as leaders or called leaders. But to a very large extent, leadership is not imposed. Leadership is inspired. True leadership that drives development and change is inspirational, requires a lot of charisma, requires a lot of vision that people identify with the individual. Because unless these attributes exist in a particular person, he may occupy the office, but he won't be able to inspire process of development at that level. So it is important. It's also important, arising from that fact is to say that leadership emerges from within the society. Because it's the people that say, oh, this person, we can see that he can show us, lead us in the right direction. Let us follow him. We see that he has a vision. We see that he has integrity. He is somebody who commands leadership, and we accept him as our leader. So the end result, that is the leadership that you get, to a large extent depends on the followership. So if you are to get the right kind of leadership, it means that the followership has a great role to play in the emergence, in the process and the emergence of the leadership. So the challenges of leadership in Nigeria, in summary, is not just looking at those at the top, which is important, but it's not enough to focus on those at the top. You have to look at the source of that leadership, the pool from which that leadership emerges. Because unless you get that right and the process of emergence, you will always have problems at the top.
Okay, Prof, thank you. Honorable Shawa, leaders, from what I've heard from the excerpts and from what Prof has said, are not necessarily those who hold leadership, but on the contrary, people are potential leaders. What's your take on that?
Well, I think to an extent I agree with Prof, but when you talk about leadership within the concept of the Nigerian state, the political leadership readily comes to mind. And who are the political leaders? Those who have been elected, and in some cases appointed by those who have been elected to lead the people and to guide them aright. So in 9 out of 10 cases when you mention leaders, everyone's mind goes in the direction of the political leadership. I think that part of the problems we have, the challenges we have, is the process of the emergence, just like Prof has said, emergence of leaders. We have a very opaque system, with due respect, that does not prop up those who, in most cases, the people may actually desire to have elected as their leaders. That is why we have a plethora of challenges here and there. Whenever elections are conducted, the tribunals are jumped to the park with litigations. So, some may be right, some may be out of outright, how do I call it? Outright temerity, But if the system is transparent enough for you to know or have reason to know that I have lost this election fair and square, it will be idle for you to to try to even pose a challenge. So in most cases, the challenges we have, just like the speaker before me has said, Professor has said, it's, the process of emergence is very key. And we must look in the direction of electoral reforms. We must have a situation where people's votes will count, and those who they actually intended to pick are those who emerge, eventually. And another salient issue is we seem to believe more in rhetorics. There are people whose characters are already shaped over the years that it would take a lot of, it would take magic or divine intervention to have them change. But in the course of campaign and electioneering, they go say, hey, XYZ is a changed person already. Nobody changes at the age of 30.
You think?
Yeah, you don't change. Once you're 30 and over, you're already formed. It's either you continue to excel on the part of the righteous deeds, or you continue on the negative side. So we must be able to pick our leaders from the point of view of the person we are seeing, not who he professes to be, because already we have known each other. A lot of us have been tested at various strata before the particular point that you are imagining. No greenhorn is able to make it to the top without some form of support by the people. So in most cases, we have the followership. To say, I've come to this irresistible conclusion that the followership are also almost as guilty as the leadership. What do I say? You complain about the people in power, you complain about the government in power. When it comes to election, they give you some peanuts and you are there dancing all over those same people. You elect them and you start complaining. I think it is what in law you call a contributory negligence. You are also partly guilty and you must take responsibility. So I think all of us have sinned one way or the other and fallen short of the glory of God. We need to look inwards and ask ourselves, because the saying goes, it's even divine, it's in the scriptures. A people get only the kind of leadership they deserve. At least from the Islamic point of view, I can tell you that. So, and as a true believer, I buy into that, and I think that we need to do a lot more. The people need to know that there has to be some form of sacrifice on their part, not immediate gains, so that they can sow the seed for a better tomorrow. That is my take on this.
Okay, Honorable Shaba, thank you very much there for your contribution. We'll come back to you. Let's bring in Johannes Toby. Johannes Toby, perhaps one way to also look at this, and I would like you to elaborate further, is to say, look, when you say a leader, contextualize it, for instance, in terms of leadership positions that you find in different spheres of life. You couldn't possibly have a maritime vessel that is so expensive and carrying goods worth several millions of naira, even of dollars. And then the captain, who is the leader of that ship, is incompetent. You couldn't possibly have, the largest aircraft we have now is 787, Boeing 787. The captain is the skipper of that aircraft. He has to be competent. He has to have skills. He has to be trained. Now, we're just talking about an aircraft. We're talking also about a ship. Soccer that Nigerians are generally crazy about. You hear sometimes why some persons are arguing, so look, this person couldn't possibly be the captain of this team because he's not a motivator. Another person will say, no, this is the chairman. We still revere Christian Chukwu today. They call him Chairman Christian Chukwu because he was a successful captain of the Green Eagles, as they were then called. So if for those other aspects, there is an essential focus on what leadership requires, and appropriate leaders are recruited, why then would it be that in the sphere of politics, which is primacy on our other aspects of life, we tend to neglect recruiting appropriate leaders or even grooming appropriate leaders?
The problem of leadership in generally in Nigeria, and I agree with Prof. I also agree with I think Senator Shekarau, is that we don't have a recruitment process. And following through with the examples you cited, one, the ship captain, the captain of the plane, I cannot wake up today and say I want to fly a plane. And if I do, even if I maybe amass some form of wealth and I'm able to buy a plane, I say I name it whatever airlines, nobody's going to fly with me. It's because I cannot show the credentials and I have not gone through the process that brings me into that category of being called a pilot. So also the captain of a ship. You can't just wake up in the morning and say you want to navigate a ship from Africa to Europe. There's a process. You go through the schools, the maritime school. You go through the flying school. But what do we have in terms of our political sphere? There is a school of politics. We have parties in this country. How many of those political parties have an institute? The APC, what does the APC have in terms of its grooming process? What is it doing with its youth forum? What is the PDP doing with its youth forum? What is the other parties, ABGA, what are their youth forums being used for? Is it for mobilization? Is it to get people to go and vote on the elections day? How do we select those who eventually will be the next crop of leaders that will take the positions of the House of Reps? And it comes from the mentality of sticking in power and not understanding that there is a generation that is following through that will come after you. For instance, there's this whole concept, and if you look back in history, that where a king is about to, more or less, he feels that his time has come, he starts to groom his next of kin. He starts to invite him to the next meetings. He starts to, where the council of chiefs are sitting down, he brings him along. He makes sure that these are the processes, this is what we do, this is how we arrive at the decisions we make. But is that happening currently? I'll take one example, and with no prejudice to the APC. The APC just set up a 61-man team, contact and strategy. And the whole list is filled up with honorable senator, former governor. No young person. No person that is being groomed to say that this person is the future. And I can bet that the youngest on that list will be 45 at the very least. That is not the process we need to see in grooming. What we have is a situation where leaders prepare the meal, and the followers come and have and sit on the dining and eat. We need to see the followers also being those who have shown capacity, identified and brought to the kitchen. We need to see them learn the ropes, because what we're having is a situation where one crop of leaders move from one era to another era, and then you have a deficit. That is what we currently have. How many of our leaders today have 1, 2, 3, 4 people who they are grooming? And you see, this concept is not just in the political arena alone. It's in all the sectors. When we look at leaders, and I disagree that only politics should or politics should have that role to say. No, every sector of the country has a part to play. How are we grooming the leaders in health? How are we grooming the leaders in engineering? Are we going to always rely on Julius Berger? How are we grooming the leaders in the ICT sector? How many people are we saying that we are looking up to this person in the ICT sectors? And those who are currently at the top of their fields today, how are they grooming? How are they recruiting the next leaders who will take over from them? We have the best health practitioners. They are leaving the country. What are we doing at the topmost of our health echelon? What are they doing to make sure that they make the space better for the younger ones who are coming? How are we grooming the next cardiologists, the next best cardiologists in the country? How are we grooming the next bridge builders? We need to be deliberate in every sector on the recruitment process. We need to have those who are already at the top take up that mandate to have an apprenticeship system that they would identify those that they see potentials in and groom them to be able to take up from them. That's why we have a leadership deficit, actually.
All right. Toby, thanks a lot for your comments. Jumaine,
Yes.
that's a pointed one. I just wanted, Prof, before we proceed again, Prof, I would like you to respond to some of the key issues on the table. Again, narrowing it down to the leadership challenges that we have around the political sector because of the primacy of politics. Toby mentioned something. We are over 20 years now in the Fourth Republic, and you can blame the interregnum and the past for the disruption and the growth and evolution of political parties. Parties still remain very fluid. I think PDP had an institute. I don't know whether it's still functioning. I don't know whether APC has an institute. Where do party followers go to seek knowledge, to seek enhancement? Where do even those who are party operatives and those who are already seated in parliament or as governors, where do they go to for research outcomes? So that you say, listen, we think that we are deviating or we are on the right track. Continue on this trajectory and we shall hit it. These are some of the things that people have been talking about in terms of the leadership deficit and therefore the very poor governance outcomes that we have all around us.
Well, thank you, Kingsley. Let me start by saying that a lot of what has been said so far is not new in Nigeria. People have been saying these things for years. People have been preaching about them. You listen to bishops, priests, they preach about these things, good leadership. You go to the mosque, the Honorable also mentioned, cited from the Islamic faith. People have been preaching and appealing. This kind of enlightenment programs have, so many of them, countless number of them have taken place. You talked about the institute. Yes, the institute is there. There are so many other platforms. I know that the National Assembly has routinely had retreats. I hope that is still on. Maybe the COVID-19 thing may have disrupted it. But in the past, there used to be retreats to ensure that members of the National Assembly are up to speed on some of these things. You cited a very good example of the captain of the ship, the pilot, and all this. Why are they getting it right? The reason is that they stick to the rules. They obey the rules. The problem in Nigeria is that most often people do not obey the rules. Honorable Shaba talked earlier about the Electoral Act. It's necessary to set laws, regulations, rules, and hold people accountable to those rules. The political parties have their constitutions. Are those rules, those constitutions adhered to? Honorable Shaba talked about litigations. A lot of those litigations happen because the rules have not been complied with. So you give opportunity to people to go to who feel that they have not been fairly treated because the rules to ensure fairness have not been complied with by the leadership of the party. The pilot can be trusted to take you from one destination to the other because the rules are followed. You have, is it ICAO or these international civil aviation rules? And if you must operate planes as a country, you must comply with those international standards. Otherwise, they will not certify you. they will not allow you. They will sanction you. The same thing with the captain of a ship. Unfortunately, at the political level, we don't have that kind of sanction, externally imposed sanction to keep people in check. Every Nigerian pilot must comply with those international regulations. But do Nigerian leadership comply with international standards? So we should begin to formulate rules and hold the leadership and the people generally accountable. Hold them accountable and ensure that they comply with the rules. And to ensure that where there's a violation of the rules, there are sanctions. For me, that is the way that Nigeria must go. If we do not go that way of ensuring that we comply with this, we'll just be repeating ourselves and debating these issues ad infinitum. Because the rules are there to guide the process, to ensure that you reach good outcomes. Even in the area of governance, you talked about governance challenges. There are rules about governance. The Constitution, which is the big law, they call it the ground norm, under which other laws come, is there. It's written in fairly simple English that people can understand. But do people comply? Do they follow? So for me, that is the major challenge, that once we begin to hold people accountable and enforce the rules in a fair manner, then we begin to see the changes that we are talking about. Anybody who finds himself in a leadership position must know that he's on the hot seat and people would assess his performance based on the extent to which he has complied with the rules. And if he has fallen short, then the sanctions will be meted out to him. Anything less than that, we unfortunately continue to group and manage. But I do hope that enlightenment programs, educative programs like this, will also serve to direct the minds of people to the right thing to do. So in summary, it is not enough just to be talking and preaching and sermonizing. Because when it comes, you may talk to people, political leadership, but when he's alone in his office with his pen taking a decision, he's not going to be listening to what the sermon he had. He will be looking at what are the implications, what are the sanctions. If I violate this, what punishment, what am I likely to suffer? Is there going to be sanction? That is what he will be considering, because there's temptation right in front of him. The only thing that will keep him in check is fear of sanction, not that somebody was preaching a sermon somewhere. So we must hold people accountable to the rules and the laws.
Honorable Shaba said in his opening comment that the process of emergence is also key.
Yes, I just talked about party primaries, for instance. Yeah. How do the candidates emerge? Is there, every party has a constitution.
Before is it followed?
That is the question.
Yes.
They are not always followed. Is there, people
but
try...
That is a peculiar disease of the Fourth Republic, yes. Prof. A peculiar disease of the Fourth Republic. Let's say it's... the Second Republic wasn't like this.
Yeah, there was more party discipline and more... Yeah, you are right. But again, how do we... Because unless things tend to degenerate, things tend to degenerate unless you avert or stop, anticipate, and stop the process. Unless you stop the process, it will get worse. Look, we are talking about banditry now. Banditry, the issue of banditry first came up when I was in Senate, between about 2004. People are thinking it's a new thing. It's not a new thing.
That's been done.
I remember that the Senate, we debated it and sent a committee of a delegation, ad hoc committee of the Senate to about Yobe, that axis, northeast axis at that time. But it continued to degenerate. to the extent that now even schools have been shut in many parts of the country. And because that was not nipped in the bud at the time.
Well,
things are getting worse.
Prof, I'm sorry, Juma, again, Honorable Shaba and Toby, you see, Prof is itemizing for us the symptoms of the leadership deficit and the governance challenges that we are facing. In real terms, we have had a conversation on Good Morning Nigeria on the so-called ungoverned spaces. Yeah. There is no space in Nigeria that is not under some authority. Yeah. So where was that authority? At some point in time, T1 up to time T2 and up to a time where we are now having these multifarious problems. There are local government chairmen. You've been a local government chairman. How many of them are up to speed with what is happening in their localities? There are councillors who have no idea, as to why they are in the place. There are other persons in positions of authority and therefore leadership, and it is this lack of either the skill or the competence or even the grooming to recognize the governance imperative that we are discussing this subject. Honorable Shaba.
Well, first, let me take my bearing from the point of still back on the leadership and the kind of people we have in saddle, with all due respect. In most cases, when leaders, let's even leave the process of the emergence. Once they get to the office, most people are concerned with populist decisions. They want to be praised. They want to be... Leadership is not it's not a popularity contest per se. There are times leaders must have to take quote and unquote painful decisions, difficult decisions, that irrespective of what the bandwagon feels, this is where I want to be. Side by side, that is the institutions. We must build strong institutions that will defy the whims and caprices of leaders who want to muzzle up the system to gain for personal gains. I looked at the American election, the one we just had, they just had recently. If the system was weak, we'll probably not have a peaceful transition. The system was strong enough to withstand the whims of a leader who thought that he could do anything, with all due respect, to perpetuate himself perhaps in power. For a man who went to court and lost some 60-something court cases to insist that he was duly elected, it blows my mind. But the system was able to. If it had happened in Nigeria, believe me honestly, he will remain. Yes. And nothing will happen. Nothing. A lot of people will go on the streets and get killed for nothing. So away from even the leadership itself is this idea of trying to build institutions. Strip the leaders, strip one man of the power to determine the fate of everybody. It has to be a collegiate thing. There must be checks. If you have a situation where a man is imbued with enormous powers and he's accountable to nobody, no institution, then we're all imperiled. I don't want to go too much into debate, but I'm sure you all appreciate what I'm saying. We need institutions to be stronger than those who are running them and not the other way around. So, it's a vicious circle. One, I don't even know which one came first, whether it's the leadership that will now build the institutions or the institution will groom the kind of leadership you have. Unfortunately for us in the political space, it's an all-comers game. There are no rules of engagement. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry can wake up today and say, look, so long as you have your school, in some cases even disputed school certificate results, you can come and say you want to run on the platform. And that's, I think the highest office in the land does not even require more than a school cert. So long as this door is left open for everybody to come in, then you're going to have a problem. We must have a system of regulating those who take the shot at leaders, because in leadership position, you are determining the fate of others. Today, the average Nigerian is imperiled. I come from a constituency that I dare not wake up and say I want to go without a retinue of security aids, and it's unacceptable to me. It has never been like that. I've never been what do you call it, an organization person, so to speak. I just like to do my things as simple as that. But today, I dare not. I live in a place, my constituency is arguably the closest to the Federal Capital Territory. I want to go on a distance of less than 200 kilometers. The kind of things that the infrastructural deficits that abound on that route makes it even easy for those who all these criminals to be able to carry out their nefarious activities unchecked. Because whether you like it or not, if you're on the highway, if you have to slow down at a particular spot, you must even slow down because the road is bad. For more than 15 years, a distance of less than 200 kilometers is still lying there. So all these things must be looked into. My idea of a leader is he that can look into the eyes of anybody and tell him the truth. My idea of a good followership are those who can rise and tell even tyrannical leaders the truth without fearing whose oath is God. Collectively, we can do it. But individually, you are imperiled. So once you start, I just imagine Nigeria. Look at Myanmar. It's a third world country. There has been a coup there. And since that coup happened, the people have not rested. In Nigeria, Mama will call, Shola, Shewani, go back home. Blah, 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 blah. Say you are the only child I have. That is the kind of things we experience. And what are you going to get? And say, okay, that is what we're left with. We have to accept it. No. A people can also shape their own destinies if they are determined. Nobody can make you inferior without your consent. If you agree that, look, these things can perpetuate and without check, so be it. But if you agree that, look, together we can make things work. The political space have experienced some form of turmoil in the past, and we got over them with the hope that things will be bettered. But your guess is as good as mine whether the answer is yes, if things are bettered. I will leave that for another day. But on the whole, sir, we don't want leaders that will pander to bandwagon. We need leaders with strength of character, leaders who can say, look, I'm working according to the dictates of the Constitution and conscience. Once you have those leaders who can stand on their own, irrespective of what majority, because in most cases, the followers don't even know what to applaud. I've seen instances, the followers who applaud even the wrong thing, yes, because they are likely misinformed. So, away from those kind of leaders who you want accolades, you want to be praised to the high heavens. No, let your results resonate in accolade for you, and not you don't force it on people. So I think we're in a big mess, but I think that this is the time to look inward. Retrospectively, and try to work on. Thank God the Electoral Act is still in the process of further amendment. I hope that Mr. President will do the needful by appending his signature to those amendments so that we can have a process that will prop up leaders transparently, minimize litigation. Don't be surprised that even those who believe they have been cheated out of the system could even start to even sabotage the system. It's not impossible. So when we have minimal infractions, then we can start to build the foundation for a greater tomorrow. That is my take.
Honorable Shaba, thank you so much. Johannes, Honorable Shaba has painted a very beautiful picture.
Absolutely.
Is there any possibility that we can and will take away godfatherism? Because this can only be possible if an individual as a leader is independent of any kind of interference from anybody. Can we take away godfatherism from leadership position in Nigeria? Can that be possible? Because, you know, you said a lot of people who are nurses, who are engineers and all that, should groom young people who are coming up. Most of these people leave this profession and join politics.
Very true.
How can that happen? How can we have a system that works?
When you say how can we have a system without godfatherism, I have perhaps an alternate view on godfatherism. I don't think that perhaps maybe our system of godfatherism is one where you have a puppet and his puppeteer, and you have a funnel that is channeling funds out of the system for his godfather. But I think we should see godfatherism from a light of grooming, of apprenticeship, where you have a person who has attained a position in government or in whatever sector and has become reached the zenith and is able to get a flock of people who look up to him, identify the best among them, and help them attain the zenith of their own leadership aspirations. I think that is how it should be looked at. And importantly, I want to piggyback on what Honorable said on institutions. I'll use Nigeria as an example. We have the institutions, we have a lot of institutions, and in terms of, for the checks and balances, we have the National Assembly, which Honorable is a member of. The judiciary is there. We have other security agencies and what have you. We have laws that guide even the processes. But the question always falls back to one thing. Are these laws being enforced? And that is what Prof had mentioned. How are we enforcing these rules? Are we following through with the enforcement of them? It boils back to the people. Institutions are not made up of artificial intelligence. Institutions are not computers that are making decisions based on algorithms. Institutions are made up of the people, the Nigerian people. Our parties have rules and regulations that govern them. Those rules and regulations, and when you look at the constitutions of the parties, and even like Prof said, even the 1999 constitution, they're all clear-cut language. This will be done this way, this will be done this way. But the people who enforce them have always been the problem. So it boils back to the fact that the people are the problem. And when you look at the people, what are the issues? The values. What are the values that we have as a people? What are the values that we have as a country? So when a person in a position to make certain decisions sits with his pen and the paper that would basically change destinies is faced with such a decision, what informs his decision? Is it his profit? Is it serving his people? Is it about how much he's going to make? Is it the interest of a few? Is it for the good of many? All of these decisions will be made based on the integrity in this person's mind.
I'm just wondering, Your Honor, Toby,
yes.
I still want to stay with you. Are there lessons that the political sector could learn, for instance, from the business sector? We're talking about leadership. Using the examples of blue chip companies that are quoted, when a CEO is appointed, sometimes you can see the impact of that appointment as the market responds, either positively.
Indeed.
The market value of the shares either go up or go down. If a CFO, that is a chief financial officer, is appointed, you can see how the market also responds, because they still look as a potential change agent. Even in politics, where certain leaders emerge in certain circumstances in certain countries, you can also see how political economists are analyzing the country risk arising from the emergence of this particular individual, and how sometimes investments will just flow away from that environment because the view will be you cannot entrust your investments to these persons. Do we seem to have that understanding in Nigeria, or as Honorable Shaba has indicated, politics is an all-comers game? You know, I don't know. I don't attend political meetings, but some of the things I hear, I mean, well, of course, people just.
You know, it's not like the other
Say it as it comes to mind.
Toby, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. So let me answer with one word, then I'll build on it. Meritocracy. Nobody becomes the CEO of Apple if he does not merit it. Nobody becomes the CEO of Twitter, of Facebook, of Google, if he's not the best person to handle the job. Even if it's your best friend or your son or whoever that comes in, you can't put that person as the CEO of Apple. Then it comes back to also governance, the governance structure, the internal governance structure. None of these companies that do not have boards of directors, boards of governance, who are there to check the activities of the CEO. The CEO cannot just wake up one morning and make decisions. He must follow through with his board. And when you look at it, we have similar structures in our country. We have similar structures in how we do governance here in Nigeria. The president, for instance, has his Federal Executive Council. Memos are brought forward. Arguments are put forward. Whether this memo will pass or that memo will not pass. So also, the Constitution has put it that no monies can be spent without the blessing of the National Assembly. That must be followed through. You cannot make expenditures. You have to have heads of MDAs go through the process of defending their budgets. These are checks and balances. These are saying that nothing would happen without some form of authority. We do have these checks and balances, and that is why I believe that in terms of the laws, in terms of the institutions, we have good enough. Laws and institutions. But the question always is, who are the people that make up these institutions? How do they merit the positions they get? How are they groomed to the leadership or the positions they get? What is the qualification really for becoming a member of the National Assembly or becoming a member of the House of Representatives or the Senate? So what substance do you bring in lawmaking? What substance do you bring in? What are the qualifications to become a minister? What substance do you bring to the Federal Executive Council? These questions are the definers of eventually how our laws or how our governance happens. But then it still falls back to meritocracy. Do the people in power merit the offices that they hold? In most cases, they do not.
Okay, Toby, thanks. Juma, I would like us to get Professor Osumbo's perspective on this. Because we talked about meritocracy and references had been made earlier to accountability. Yesterday, Professor Sam Egu said something as part of the comments by other guests, that visioning being one of the requirements of leadership is already encapsulated in Chapter 2 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, being the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. So, for any person who is interested in political governance, take that document and then apply it to your domain. Whether you are a local government councillor, you are a local government chairman or House of Assembly member, and so on and so forth. And then the checks and balances to which Toby has made reference are also scattered in different sections of the Constitution. To say, yes, even though we have the emperor syndrome these days in the States, there are otherwise you are supposed to have checks and balances. But it would appear that with the rising impunity, that aspects of our Constitution are just being ignored, being neglected. And people just drift, and the consequences, of course, are the things that we are seeing with us today. How, therefore, can we begin to draw attention again to these essential requirements of leadership? For you to be a leader, you must be informed yourself. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? How do you respond to your followers, to the yearnings of your followers? Prof.
Well, Honorable Toby used a number of words which are very relevant, very germane. One, he talked about our value system. Yes. You may have the same kind of constitution as the United States of America, but if your value system is different, then the result will be different, which is why the issue of value system of the society is very relevant here. An example was also cited, given of Myanmar, where they are battling with the military. The value system of the people, the behavior, the attitude of the people has thrown up a peculiar situation there, which may not necessarily be replicated were it to be Nigeria. That is the point that was made before. Then, Honorable Toby also mentioned the issue of meritocracy. He hammered on that severally, which is important as opposed to mediocrity. I also made the point that, as they say, bad money drives away good money. The negative always appears to carry more force than the positive. I hope this is correct in physics or chemistry. But what I mean is mediocrity has a way of multiplying itself in geometric proportions, whereas meritocracy may operate maybe in arithmetic proportion. It is easier for mediocrity to multiply and replicate itself. And when you have a system which is not based on meritocracy, then you begin to have the symptoms that we are seeing. Jumai talked about, asked him the question of the leadership being influenced by godfatherism. And the answer is that you cannot really rule out godfathers. They exist, even in the church. There are people are happy to say, this is my godfather. There's nothing inherently bad in godfatherism or to say, I have a godfather. But it is what the godfather does, what the two of them do with that relationship that really should cause concern. And if the godfather now decides to appropriate the whole system to himself, then the evils begin to manifest. I would say again, we've talked about strong institutions. And I made the point before that those institutions will be strong if the rules guarding them are strong. Using the example, the world is a global village now, so we should feel free to learn from the successes of other countries. In the US, while the outcome went the way it did and the people were able to resist the attempt to disrupt the process, is that I watched a video of a military, an army officer, coming out to say their loyalty is not to any individual, it is to the Constitution.
Correct. That's correct.
We want to see people saying that my loyalty is not to you, it is to the Constitution. And as you said, I have a copy of the Constitution. I'm familiar with what the Constitution expects of me, and I will do what the Constitution enjoins me to do. We saw the role that the courts played in the US. The court said some of these elections being disputed are governed by the laws of the state.
Exactly.
You may not like it, but if the state says they've certified it, there's nothing we can do. Again, because the laws of the state are respected. The courts respect the laws, the federal system of the United States of America. So I've just taken two examples. The military are loyal to the Constitution. The courts are loyal to the Constitution. That is what we should be doing. And I have mentioned before, several times before, that we need more people to have, you talked about councillors and chairmen and honorable members having, do they really read? Do people read? You know, it's said that there's a very poor reading culture amongst Nigerians. Do they read the Constitution? I remember I mentioned the last time I appeared on this program, I also said whether these big elected political office holders, do they bother to read the Constitution? So we must get to the stage of emphasizing that it's not just enough. And I made the recommendation, each time a new National Assembly comes, they must give them copies of the Constitution, all these things, including some landmark cases of the courts, because some of the crises, contentions that I see happening in the National Assembly have been educated upon before by the Supreme Court. So if the new members, because institutional memory is short because of the high turnover rate at the National Assembly, if they were to see the decisions of the Supreme Court 10, 15 years ago, they will be properly guided. Then my final word on this now is the federal system in Nigeria should operate better. We are supposed to be a federation, but the federal system is not operating as it should. Using, for instance, the example of the United States of America. For instance, we should have the main concern of Nigerians now is insecurity. And that is because the governors who are supposed to be the chief security officers of the state always come out to say they are just chief security officer by name. They don't have any command or control powers over the security forces in their states. I know that there have been, I think the federal government, Mr. President also, has directed that states must protect their forests. I hope he was quoted. I have read that, and I hope that is true. And if that is the case, the states should be able to exercise, have forces of coercion to be able to monitor their forests and to flush out these bandits from the forests. The National Assembly is going through the process of amending the Constitution, and I do hope, two of you are here, that you will do what is needed as much as possible to ensure devolution of some powers from the federal to the state, because many people have agreed that the exclusive legislative list is too heavily loaded. There are items that you can easily move to the concurrent list, if not remove and render it a residual matter completely. But there are areas that you can strengthen the states in order that they are able to play their role in minimizing the challenges of good governance in Nigeria.
Okay, Senator Osarame Osumbo, former governor of Edo State and former chairman, Nigerian Law Reform Commission, thank you so much for coming. We're running out of time. We have another topic to discuss on the program this morning.
Thank you
so much.
My pleasure.
Honorable Shabo Ibrahim, member representing Lokoja Kwatankarfi Federal Constituency and former Algon chairman, Kogi State. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
And Johannes Toby Wajola, curator, Abuja Global Shapers Community. Your input has been very, very pleasurable to listen to. And we hope younger men will come up, to look for elective positions so that they will say they are not being left behind. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
On the program. And we'll take a break now. When we return, our second conversation on the program begins.
Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source
and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire. Teacher yo mo, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher yo mo, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé.
Ajebo na better school for last gidi. Not be all this on a rugged yes school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
Second, it's called Oja Village. Kadesi. We no happy at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders too. Hey, we are trying, shall. Sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
I talk with that now.
Not for me. You want me to die? Not for me because of Pamio.
You're welcome back. The Federal Executive Council in its sitting last week approved the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery at the cost of $1.5 billion.
Well, the approval has generated mixed reactions from several quarters as to the propriety otherwise of the overhaul of the Port Harcourt refinery.
And to give us clarification into the project is Dr. Brown Ogbesun, oil and gas expert. He's joining us via Zoom from Warri. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so very much, madam. Thank you, NTA. Good morning, Nigerians.
And here with us in the Abuja studios is Desmond Utoma. He's a public affairs analyst. It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Our pleasure to be with you here. Thank you. And good morning.
All right, so let's begin with Dr. Brown Ogbesun. Well, of course, you are aware of the heated debate generated by the announcement of the proposed rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery at a cost of some $1.5 billion. Are the reactions warranted in terms of those who have said, look, don't do this, or those who have said, no, we must do it?
Thank you once again, the NTA, and once again, thank you for having me. Before answering that, I just want to put some rhetorical questions, which of course I'm going to provide answers to quickly. First, this is an emotive thing, because there are those that would have wished to scrap the PHRC, buy it, and then turn it around like they did to one of the petrochemical plants, and versus those who believe that national assets and indeed that Nigeria must produce its own fuel because of the fact that we have enormous hydrocarbon within Nigeria. So two, the 1.5 billion, yes, it looks so big, but by the time we take on these discussions, we find out that when you have a refinery of about 210,000 barrels, refining capacity per day, and you want to build a new one, you are going to be sourcing for close to about $10 billion. So we're going to just suppose that maybe as we continue, like I said. And this 1.5 billion naira dollars, I don't think it is just coming from the federal government's pocket. it is going to be sourced, and that is how business should be done. Third, I believe that if the NNPC had been an autonomous body with a private entity cap like other multinationals, the NNPC would ordinarily have gone to source for its own funds. All right? And then nobody today will question Shell, Chevron, Mobil, how they get their funds. So if the NNPC is a truly commercialized entity, it will have been able to source for its funds, do its own business, and nobody is going to question that. Therefore, let me again say that the future of the hydrocarbon industry in this country lies in the quick passage of the PIB, right? Today, not tomorrow, because the bill is going to create a new NNPC that will expand and keep the downstream sector very active, pay taxes to federal government like the LLNG, and of course pay its own royalty. We need to ask, what do Nigerians really want? President Obasanjo, during his, at the twilight of his administration, decided to privatize the refineries. The labor movement fought it, rightly so, because they believe that the strategic national assets should not go to, some level of hands that you are not too sure, and that you must privatize using those who have experience in running refineries. Nigerians also believed in that at that particular time. And what did they do? They pressured President Yaradua, who reversed the sales. And in 2015, I think the APC government, the PDP said, by Atiku Abubakar, the former vice president, said, if elected, he was going to privatize the refineries. And of course, the APC stood against it and said, no, you don't do that. And at the end of the day, I'm sure former Vice President Atiku lost some votes through that. And now this government that promised that they were going to build new refineries or revitalize and rehabilitate the refineries also want to do it, yet Nigerians are giving it enough. So the question is, what do we need from government? Is it that refineries must run, give us service, or we just believe that you need to scrap it and then begin to import petroleum products? For me, any model can run any of the refineries, any model at all. It is dependent on the willpower of government or whosoever owns the refinery to run it with best practices. We are quick to benchmark with the United States of America. And because of that, I also want to use it to give my own example on why we need our own refineries to work. America, as it is today, in the state of Texas, has about 47 operating refineries. Louisiana has 19. California has 18. Yes, many people will say that they are privately managed. And Pengassan, I remember in 2004, had told the federal government that they need to use the NLNG model in running the refineries. And some of these refineries in Texas are having about 500,000 to about 607,000 productions per day. And it will interest you to know that Saudi Aramco, all the way from Saudi Arabia, has one of the biggest refineries right there in the US. So what is wrong in having our own? More so that you don't have money to build a new one, and you have people that can loan you money to refurbish it and have a new refinery. Because what people think is that they want to do a turnaround maintenance. I don't think that is what I got from the federal government's approval. What I got from it is that they want to do a total rehabilitation of the refinery. And that is different from routine TAM, which is supposed to be every 2 months. TAM is that it is a routine thing that you do to maintain it. And that refinery, for instance, has not been turned around for the past 21 years. Let us look at our cars, for instance. If your car begins to smoke, you go to your mechanic. Your mechanic tells you, oh, the piston is bad. Oh, the other one is bad. We need to buy half engine. By the time you are going to buy that half engine, you are going to spend money putting it. And so what we are having today is because of the failure of what we refused to do in the past. So rehabilitating the refinery means that you are going to remove some of those critical parts. You are going to upgrade it, and then you are going to make it run to about 90% capacity. And that refinery has about could produce about 10 million liters of petroleum, of PMS per day. And when you rehabilitate it and it works, then you are now going to be benefiting from the forex that you are going to conserve, because you are not going to be spending that forex to import about 10 million liters per day. And what does that mean? It also means that most of the mega filling stations that you have in and around Nigeria could easily be serviced. And that has been the saving grace of most Nigerians, even when you have fuel scarcity.
Dr. Brown, thank you so much. We now have to come back to the studio because we're sort of running out of time. Desmond, yeah. Dr. Brown has sort of painted a picture that most Nigerians are not, likely to like, because the knock on this project is that so much money has been put into rehabilitation of these refineries and nothing has happened. We've had oil boom from oil boom up. Some Nigerians are even saying this shouldn't have happened in the first place. So what are the dynamics, and, the economics of the rehabilitation and building new refineries if we have to do that?
Yeah, I think Dr. Brown has already laid a solid foundation with regards to the economics. If you look at it, if you have to build a new refinery, definitely you're going to spend so much money. All right, the cheapest is out there for about 230,000 barrels per day capacity, like we saw in Brazil, is about $12 billion. So if you are to build a refinery here, so you have to start thinking about budgeting about $12 billion as against the $1.5 billion. The question is, do you have the money? And if you don't have the money, so you go for the cheaper option, which is rehabilitation. And from what the minister has said and what I was made to understand, this rehabilitation is not just the regular turnaround maintenance. It is a comprehensive overhaul of the refinery. That at the end of the day, you are almost likely going to have a brand new refinery. So I think that is cost effective if you must look at it from that perspective. If you also look at it, what are the benefits of having these refineries to work as against just selling it off? One, if you have to sell it off, you probably might be selling it off as scrap because it's currently not functional. So you don't just go to the market, you want to dispose something that is not working. So you probably will have to put it in a better shape before you can start thinking of selling it off. People who want to buy it will now price it better than it were. Again, if we don't fix it, and we are unable to sell it, Nigerians are subjected to all of the challenges of buying fuel at a high price. We know what it is. Only a few weeks ago, we talked about the landing costs, about 212 naira. And we saw the uproar in the country that Nigerians can't pay that kind of money from the 165 naira that it is currently. That is because of the landing cost of petroleum products. So we need to refine our products back home. So how do we start doing this? We have to fix our refinery. All right. There's also a strategic part of it which has to do with energy security. And because this is also a strategic national asset, you can rightly boast that because this belongs to the country, you have some level of security as against just depending on importation. Yeah, somebody will always say that Dangote refinery is by the corner. It will be coming up anytime soon. But don't forget, that is business. All right. By the time Dangote also come upstream, if he decides to sell at the prevailing market price, all right, you can't stop him because he's an individual that has built that refinery. So by and large, I think it is better that the government is taking this decision to rehabilitate this refinery, that at the end of the day, if it works, it will be in the interest of everybody. What our focus should be now is how do we support this initiative, one, and two, how do we keep asking the right questions so that we don't have the kind of experiences that we probably must have had before. The controversies out there are understandable because some people believe that you have spent money previously, it didn't quite work. So there is a tendency that this time around it still might not work. Yet it is justifiable that you have all of those concerns out there. But I think the model that is put in place in this time around, is something that is worth commending. The ORM model, which shows that they operate and maintain, all right, and they generate the fund with which they are going to pay back this $1 billion that they are taking from Afri-Exim Bank that is going to sponsor this rehabilitation. Also, at the end of the day, you also look at it as a bank. they wouldn't want to put their money in a venture that they are not sure will not succeed. That means they must have done their due diligence before they are even advancing that kind of money. So I am tempted to agree with government, to agree with the NNPC and the federal government generally on this very line that they are trying to tow, and we expect that at the end of the day we'll have a better deal from all of this.
It will be in 3 phases, 18 months, 24
phases.
months, 44 months. At
Yes.
what point do we expect it to start,
In 18 months, the first phase. Yeah, the minister explained that after 18 months, we may most likely have 90% functional of the refinery that can refine at 90%, which is about 180,000 barrels per stream day. Yeah, about 180,000 if you look at it, because the total capacity is about 210,000 capacity. So if they're able to put it to work for that 18 months, about 90% would have been churning out from there.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Desmond Utome. Just to get the closing thoughts, as it were, of Dr. Brown Ogbefun. Dr. Ogbefun, you asked a very pertinent question. Exactly what do Nigerians want? We all remember what happened in 2007 when there was the uproar about Dangote taking over one of the refineries in Rivers. And then, of course, that transaction was eventually cancelled or revoked by the administration of President Yar'Adua. Today, you will also hear government officials saying, oh, we're going to rely on the Dangote private refinery in the Lekki-Ekpe axis of Lagos. But let's ask ourselves this question. There is a great deal of anxiety as to why the government will be spending $1.5 billion on one refinery. There are 2 refineries in the Rivers area. There's one at Onne. Kaduna refinery is also there, and Warri refinery is also there. The combined production of these 4 refineries, some persons argue, still falls short of our national needs. But we are singing the praise now of rehabilitating one refinery in another 4 years. When will the rehabilitation of the other 3 refineries begin? That's one question. Second question will also be, what exactly are we going to do with the management of those refineries, where we've been spending billions of naira each year, according to the audited accounts of the NNPC?
Thank you so very much. The fears of Nigerians are concerning. It is true that certain things didn't go well the way we would have loved it to be in the past as a nation. But recall that I did say that for a refinery that has not gone through turnaround maintenance for 21 years, and you want to rehabilitate it because you don't have money to build a new one, then it becomes necessary to rehabilitate, replace all the parts, make it new, turn it around. I don't think they are saying that it's going to be in the next 4 years, really. I know that that's the completion for the final phase, but at least in 18 months, I thought what I had was that in 18 months, it's going to, get to about 90% of its optimum capacity. Having said that, and with the 2 questions you have asked, if you want to start building a new refinery of between 250,000 to 500,000 barrels per day, for instance, you need about 5 to 7 years, all right, to complete it. And I want to tell you sincerely that building about 250,000 barrels will cost you close to about $10 billion US. We are talking of the two refineries in Port Harcourt, and you are having about combined capacity of about 210,000 barrels. So if you are liters, so if you are able to bring it to life, it means that Nigerians will have that economies of scale. Now, you talked about Dangote refinery, for instance. It's a good thing for Nigeria, but what I need to say is that we need more refineries. I just gave some numbers of what happens in some states where you have about 47 refineries. We need more to make Nigeria the hub of activities for hydrocarbon industry within the sub-region. Now, What does it mean for Nigeria? It will help us to cut the importation of petroleum products, lay foundation for co-location principles, for instance, all right, that will help other small value chain plants to begin to come up within the presence of the Port Harcourt refinery.
Okay, thank you so much. We're actually running out of time. We're on borrowed time now. Thank you, Dr. Brown Obesun, oil and gas expert. He joined us via Zoom from Warri. Thank you so much for your input. Desmond Utome, public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Do join us again tomorrow for another edition.